Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our producer, Jeff DeRaw. As you may have guessed, we are at the Hayes Fire Department and in one of the main bays talking with Hayes Fire Chief Gary Brown as we talk about fire safety for you and your family members for the winter months. And first of all, if we could, Chief Brown, give us a report on the fire and some of the extensive situations that occurred at the T-Bones Bar and Restaurant.
Sure. Last week we did have a fire at the T-Bones Restaurant, and it was, when the fire department was alerted, the fire was already pretty well developed. In other words, we think the fire had burned for some time, and then it actually broke in some windows and started getting air. And of course, it was just a little bit before 9 a.m. Then, of course, a lot of people saw it. We went there, obviously, and found a serious fire condition in the restaurant. But more challenging for us is that restaurant shares a common building with three other occupancies. There was a beauty salon, a gift shop, and a Next Tech facility that were all under the common roof, and there's no firewalls between those to stop the fire spread. So our concern was to get enough people there quickly to be able to get into all those other places and keep the fire from spreading into them. So we called our mutual aid neighbors, the Rural Fire Department, Ellis Fire Department, Victoria Fire Department, who responded promptly. And total, between the City of Hayes Fire Department and our mutual aid partners, we had 40 firefighters at work at that fire, and the fire didn't spread into any of the other places, but the smoke did spread. And obviously, if the smoke can spread, the fire's going to be following it pretty fast. And as a matter of fact, one of the initial calls was from the beauty salon saying that the fire was in the back of their place because the smoke was rolling in that heavily. So we were able to contain that, and we really appreciate our mutual aid partners, Ellis, Victoria, and the Rural Fire Department, for coming to our aid for that. It really gave us enough people to be able to be in all the places the fire could spread and be able to cut that off.
Couple of points that we could bring into our discussion today, Chief Brown, is that one of which is the number of firefighters is important because it helps in efficiency and containing what could be a potentially bigger problem.
Sure. Basically, every hose line that gets put in service to fight a fire takes 3 firefighters for it to be able to move. It's not like pulling your garden hose around your backyard. And a big hose line flows about 300 gallons a minute. What we call a small hose line flows about half that, 150 gallons a minute. So to get it where it needs to be, or take it up a flight of stairs, or plus when you're taking it through a gift shop, you just don't want to be dragging it through there and breaking everything on their way. So having 3 firefighters is pretty much the standard to get the hose moving. And then you also need firefighters in what we call safety, so that if somebody gets in trouble, let's say somebody falls down and breaks their leg, or you have to have people that you can put right in there to go get them and get them out. So we have we need a safety crew. So it's easy to take 40 fire, and then they only last for about 10-15 minutes in those air packs. So you have to constantly have people to rotate into their place. So this 3-man crew is now exhausted their air. You need another 3-man crew to move in right behind them. So having 40 firefighters for a fire like T-Bones, basically you use them all.
Something else that occurs that you've highlighted before for homeowners specifically is that don't give a fire a chance to get ahead. In other words, if there is a problem, call 911 and get the fire department there the sooner the better.
Sure, we call it a pessimistic response. Expect the worst. We have 5 firefighters on duty at the Main Street Fire Station every day and 1 out at the airport. But when we have a report of a fire in a building, well, let me back up on that a little bit. Those 5 firefighters are perfectly adequate to take care of a car on fire or a trash container on fire outside, those types of things. Investigate fire alarms, deal with a traffic crash. we're having a very windy day here.
I was going to say one of those poly carts has met its match against the Kansas wind, it looks like.
But,
back to the fire
department, yes. But when you have a fire inside of a building, now the speed at which it will grow and spread basically changes the whole dynamic on how many people you need. So when we get that report of, somebody calls up and says, I smell smoke in my house, we consider that a very dangerous situation. So we not only send the 5 on-duty firefighters, we bring in all our off-duty people. We average about 18 firefighters to respond to that initial report of a potential building fire. Now, if we get there and it's just something minor, then it's easily taken care of and we send everybody else home. But if we do find a serious fire burning there, then we have enough backup to take care of that, plus answer other alarms in the city that might be coincident with that fire. We can't be, and we have this all the time. We're investigating this report of smoke in a house and we get a report of a fire alarm on the campus, or so we have to have crews that can respond to those other calls at the same time we're dealing with the first fire.
Gary, what's the most common, to kind of give homeowners an idea, what's the most common source of fire in a home?
Well, in the city of Hayes, let's talk city of Hayes specifically, and I don't have exact numbers on this, but and we don't have a huge number of fires to create a big statistical base, but generally the thing that causes the most fire department responses is cooking fires. People who start cooking and their kids distract them, or they go do something else, and the next thing you know, whatever it is they're cooking is burning. Okay, so cooking fires is number one, and that's easily dealt with. Is the people just need to focus on cooking, and the other thing too is don't use your stovetop, especially your electric stovetop, as a storage place. People put combustibles on the stovetop. Somebody accidentally turns the knob or whatever, next you have a fire from that source. The second thing would be electrical equipment malfunctions. Electrical equipment that burns up, a wall socket that shorts out and catches fire, unsafe use of extension cords that are damaged, they've been pinched in the door, the insulation is broken down. They're overloaded. Extension cords are overloaded. If you start seeing, it looks like it's heat shrunk, your extension cord, the covering starts to melt, and you start to see the wires underneath. That's been overheated. It's been carrying too much electricity for what it was designed for. Then it would be obviously heating equipment. We have a fair number of fires that are just because people don't properly dispose of ashes from their fireplaces or their wood-burning stoves. Already this year, we've had one of the city's poly carts burn up in an alley because somebody put hot ashes in it. And by the way, that cost $50. The city charges the subscriber $50 to get a new poly cart. So, you go to the hardware store, you buy yourself a nice metal trash can with a lid. You put your ashes in there until they get cool. It's amazing how long those ashes can smolder. So, just being careful with how those are disposed of. And the other thing we're seeing an increase in fires with is cigarettes disposed of in the garden mulch. And as dry as it's been, the cigarette smolders there, sets the garden mulch on fire. And we haven't really had too many serious fires with this yet. We've had some garden mulch fires that have started to extend to the house, and we've been able to put them out right away with minimal damage. But around the country, we're seeing reports where restaurants are burning down because the people come out of the restaurant and they throw the cigarette in the garden mulch, and 2 o'clock in the morning, the restaurant is now, or 4 o'clock in the morning, restaurant's burning down. People just need to be careful with what they do with their smoking materials.
Well, you've touched on a few things, and I would like for you, if you would, Gary, to give some tips for fire prevention for the coming winter months for homeowners. Some of the things that we need to be alerted to, I don't think we can say it often enough.
Sure. Obviously, use care when cooking. Take a look at those electrical devices. If you're using some kind of electrical device and it starts to malfunction, we had a refrigerator fire that burned out a kitchen of a house here just recently. The refrigerator wasn't functioning properly, that needs to be looked at before the fire occurs. So maintaining things, having your gas furnace, your electric furnace, your hot water heater checked by a qualified service technician, and that's both for the fire hazard and the carbon monoxide hazards that those things could create. The gas furnace, gas hot water heater. Having a metal can to dispose of your your ashes from your fireplace. Having proper ashtrays and things, and not taking that ashtray and dumping it into your plastic kitchen trash can. It needs to go be properly disposed of. But the other thing too is that people need to be sure they have a working smoke alarm to protect each sleeping area of the home. And I really want to stress, if a fire occurs in your house when you're awake and alert, you'll know about it. That smoke alarm is for when you're asleep. So the smoke alarm needs to be in the sleeping areas of the home, in the bedrooms, and you can put them in each bedroom, put them in the hallway outside of your bedroom. But make sure you have working smoke alarms. Obviously, if they have the 1-year batteries, the batteries need to be changed every year, and now is a good time to do it in the fall. Some smoke alarms have 10-year batteries. All smoke alarms are pretty much non-functional after 10 years. They need to be replaced every 10 years. Making sure you have a working carbon monoxide alarm that's in the living space of your home. It's not for the garage. It's not for your furnace room in the basement. You're going to have carbon monoxide there that'll cause false alarms. It's this living space. Put it in your hallway, in your kitchen, in your living room, wherever you want to put them. In my house, we have them in the hallways outside of each sleeping area.
But not too close to combustible sources like water heaters, furnaces, things like that, because it will trigger false alarms.
Right. And carbon monoxide alarms are designed to sense the slow buildup of carbon monoxide that would occur if you had a malfunction. Let's say your hot water heater was malfunctioning. They'll sense that slow buildup and then ultimately go into alarm. They generally don't alarm because you just have a little momentary spike. But obviously, if you put one in your garage and you start up your car, you should expect your carbon monoxide alarm is not going to work properly. Like I said, it needs to be where you live, where you're breathing every day. And carbon monoxide alarm, I'd like to really stress to everybody, it's odorless, it's colorless. The carbon monoxide accidents happen with no warning. About 500 people each year die in carbon monoxide accidents in our nation. We've had 3 carbon monoxide deaths in our city in my 10 years here as fire chief. We really want to stress that people, the only way you know that you've got a carbon monoxide problem is to have a carbon monoxide alarm or 2 in your home.
Because you could be in peril and not even know it.
Right. And the people who die in carbon monoxide accidents don't know that they're in danger.
Now, in the past, Gary, Hayes Fire Department has had available smoke detectors. Is that program still available?
Sure. Right now, with a very generous donation that we got from Mr. Dick Worth out of Auto World, we have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms to install for people in our city who cannot otherwise afford that protection. We will also help. By the way, if anybody feels that they can't afford a carbon monoxide alarm or a smoke detector, if they would just give us a call, we will come out and install them in their home at no cost. The other thing we'll do, let's say people have mobility impairments, they're senior citizens and they don't want to get up on a step ladder to change the battery or to change their alarms. The firefighters will do that for them. In other words, people can go to a store, buy a new carbon monoxide alarm or buy a new smoke alarm, ask us to install it, and we will be happy to do that for them. We will be happy to change their batteries for them. We don't want them falling off and getting hurt and then creating another alarm. But we want to be sure that people have this protection, and again, there are people that that it would be difficult to afford that protection, and we do have some smoke and carbon monoxide alarms for those people.
Once again, we thank the support of Dick Worth and Auto World for being able to provide those. speaking of smoke detectors, we've had some reports in the past, and I'm sure they've crossed your desk, Gary, about the different smoke detectors, the ionization versus the photoelectric, and some studies are showing that the photoelectric is quicker at sensing fires than is the ionization. What's your professional take on that?
My professional opinion is the underwriters' laboratories have a very disciplined system to test home smoke alarms, and if your smoke alarm is listed by the underwriters' laboratories as having passed that test, look for that UL label, then you have a device that is suitable to protect you and your family. Yes, there is a controversy going on. Some studies are indicating one thing and some studies another, and I think the jury's still out on that. I don't want people to think that they might have a smoke alarm at home that's not safe and protecting them. As long as it's less than 10 years old and the battery is good and they keep it clean and it's installed in the right place, they should count on that smoke alarm to warn them in the event of a fire.
Regardless of which it is of the two types.
Sure. If people have, there are some studies that are giving us mixed reports, and if people should have more than one smoke alarm. So if you wanted to create a mix between the ionization type, which uses a little radiation source, and the photoelectric type, which uses a light beam, the smoke interrupts the light beam. I will say that in today's homes, we are filling our homes with lightweight furnishings and contents that are they're lightweight and they're petroleum-based synthetics. They burn much faster and they put off black smoke, and it happens much quicker than what we've experienced in the past. The other thing too is it doesn't happen anything like you see on TV and the movies. Okay, that is not the way to make a decision. So being sure to have that working smoke alarm outside of each sleeping area in the bedrooms to give you as much warning as possible so you can get out, because I will stress that seconds count, and in the environments that we have today, seconds count.
And as you have re-emphasized before, you would much rather have a 911 call to come to a location to investigate the potential for a fire rather than somebody waiting until the fire has gotten the upper hand, basically.
Sure. The fire department exists to provide service to the people. The only way we get to provide that service is when they call. But yes, we would much rather come when the incident is small and easily controlled than get there when it's too late and unfortunately people might be dead. We want people to call us right away, and I want to stress again, people don't realize how quickly a fire goes from that little smoldering thing to explosive growth. And I use the term explosive without any exaggeration. The fires literally explode. But think about it. We are loading up our houses with petroleum-based synthetic materials. All these plastics, all this glued-together furniture, the glued-together wood, all that stuff burns very quickly and gives off dense black smoke, and people can't afford to underestimate what's going to happen. Can we talk a little bit about what to do with your family and things with that?
That's a perfect break right there, and we'll do that following our break on the Community Connection with the Hayes Fire Department Chief Gary Brown. We'll be back after the break with more of the Community Connection from Eagle Community Television.
I'm a TV show junkie. I can't get enough of home improvement shows. I'm always looking for ways to make my house and yard better. With Eagle's great selection of channels and an Eagle DVR, I record my shows and watch them anytime. And when I'm ready for my project, my shows are stored on my DVR to watch again.
Add to your selection of HD TV programs with Eagle's digital package and get a free HD DVR for 6 months by calling 877-61-EAGLE today.
Whatever TV program you're hooked on, Eagle has it.
Welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. We're at the Hayes Fire Department with Chief Gary Brown as we talk about fire safety for the winter months. And Gary, we did want to ask you to give us some tips for family members And what do we do as far as families to make sure that everybody's safe?
Well, before the break, we were talking about how quickly the fires spread, or fires grow and spread in the modern environment that we have ourselves in. And we were talking about how everything we've got is this lightweight petroleum-based stuff.
Easily combustible.
It burns quickly and makes a lot of black smoke. And I guess there's really two ways to look at this. Number one is, what would you do as an individual, and then what are you going to do with your family? You know, what are your kids going to do? You don't want to be worried about them doing. Well, obviously you're going to be worried about them.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to do something to prepare in advance. The worst thing you can do is to wait till the fire occurs and say, "Well, I've got plenty of time." I want to stress again, there will not be time. So the first thing I think families need to do is, how are they going to get out? And you need to look at your front door, you need to look at your back door, and make sure that you and your kids can unlock that door and get out of that house without the use of a key. People put these, especially on their back doors, they have glass windows in them, and they have a double-keyed deadbolt lock. So they use the key to lock the door at night so somebody can't break the window and reach in. Well, your house is filling with smoke, your kids run to that door, and they can't open that door because you've got the key up on your dresser and you're downstairs too. You need to be sure that everybody in your family can unlock that door. We recommend, if people have these double-keyed deadbolt locks, that they keep a key like on a hook, maybe a short chain that'll reach over to the door, where that's handy for anybody in the family to unlock that door. And the second thing too is, don't try to fight the fire yourself. Get out. So the fundamental thing for everybody in their home fire safety plan should be, get out, call the fire department. And think about that too. You know, most people have a cell phone. Where do they keep that cell phone? You know, if they're busy looking around trying to find their cell phone, trying to find their keys, you know, they ought to just, have things set in a certain place every night so they can grab it. Again, in the daytime, you're going to know about your fire much quicker. At nighttime is when you're going to be caught off guard. You're going to be waking up. You're going to be slow to react because you're groggy from sleep. And then too, maybe carbon monoxide or the other fire gases are going to affect your ability to reason. So you need to really kind of drill this, and then make sure your kids know what to do. Make sure they know that when that smoke alarm goes off, they're getting up and getting out of the house. They're not going to find the dog. They're not going to get their homework or whatever. That they're going to get out of that house right away and get to a common meeting place where you can count heads and make sure you know all your kids are there and your wife is there, and you can call for help, and then you can decide what to do. We really encourage people not to fight the fire, but to call the fire department first. If they do choose to try to fight their own fire, let's say they have a small fire, call the fire department first, then try to fight the fire.
And what about fighting a fire? Home fire extinguishers, do they give you a kind of a false sense of security perhaps, Gary? Or even kitchen fires, for example, cooking fires and things, where we tend to think, I can put this out, but maybe not.
Sure, and it's like anything. If you haven't trained in how to use it properly, and you don't know what to expect when you pull the trigger, you could actually spread the fire. Or, the one guideline we give everybody is, if the fire is touching the ceiling, it's too late. You can't fight that fire. It's going to grow too fast. Get out. But people try these makeshift aids. They have a little fire, they run the kitchen, they find a pot or a pitcher, they start to fill it up with water. Well, how long does that take? Then they turn around, now the fire's much bigger. And unfortunately, sometimes people die just to the carbon monoxide or the hydrogen sulfide that's given off. Modern furnishings today, plastics and all, give off hydrogen sulfide, and that turns to acid when it mixes with your lungs, and it burns up your lung tissue. They take a couple whiffs of that toxic brew of smoke and gases from their fire, and they drop dead. So again, we really want to stress, smoke alarm goes off or you realize you have a fire, get out, get everybody out, know how you're going to get out, and then call the fire department we really discourage people from trying to fight the fire themselves.
Finally, in our last couple of minutes, Gary, going back to some things we talked about earlier about checking for safety. Furnaces, things like that, appliances perhaps should be professionally checked every season?
Sure. You know, again, what builds up on that burner ring in your furnace or that burner ring in your hot water heater? Is the flue in proper alignment? Is it getting enough makeup air to draw a draft to exhaust the carbon monoxide? All those things need to be professionally checked. People need to know what they're doing. Just because it looks good doesn't necessarily mean it's safe.
Another inspection that we can do ourselves, those little space heaters that sometimes people use to kind of heat a particular area. Got to be careful with safety on those for sure, don't you?
Sure. Clearance from combustibles is the big thing there. And when you have pets, when you have small children, you know, your little toddler drags her blanket down and next thing you know it's laying over top of that electric space heater. You just need to be vigilant with those things. They're perfectly fine for special needs. Especially, again, UL listed, so that they have the necessary over-limit switches and safety devices and things so that they are as safe as technology can make it. You know, years ago when I started in the fire service, space heaters, kerosene heaters were, you know, there was a really bad fire record for those things. Modern portable heater devices are very safe, but the fact is that if you have a heat source and you put combustibles too close to it, you know, your little toddler lays her blanket over top of that thing, it's going to start to smoke, catch fire, and you know, all bets are off.
Well, and you have to inspect the wiring, for example. If you've had that space heater for years and years, wiring does heat up just with a normal operation, so make sure it's safe and watch those extension cords too.
Yeah, everything breaks down over time, including us.
Speak for yourself, Chief Brown.
But yeah, everything breaks down over time, and at some point things become unsafe. And you know, again, we talked about heaters and electrical equipment and so forth. Time's the big enemy. You know, it gets used, it gets plugged in, it gets unplugged, it gets plugged in. You know, things break down and they become unsafe.
One thing you've said in the past too, quickly, is to not run those extension cords under those throw rugs and things like that, because you can't tell when they're frayed or when there's a problem then.
Early in my career, one of the worst fires I went to was a fire where 3 people were killed, and the problem was that they had an extension cord that they were using for power in their living room, and they had inadvertently put the leg of the sofa on top of that extension cord, and as people sat on the sofa and got up, sat on it, ultimately it broke down, and in the wee hours of the morning it caused a fire and killed 3 people.
Hayes Fire Department Chief Gary Brown, and would you take some time on behalf of all of us who feel a whole lot safer with the expert attention that the Hayes Fire Department and Chief Brown and all of the firefighters bring to their jobs, that we feel pretty good. We really do, and thank them for their service, if you would, Gary.
Sure.
Our Community Connection, thanks to our producer, Jeff Durall, and thanks to you for watching Community Connection from Eagle Community Television.